Good evening, Ship Familia. Welcome back to the latinXfactor Sharpening Your Professional Edge program. I'm Dr. Dora Renaud, the Senior Director of Academic Programs for Ship National. Tonight is our 11th webinar, your 90-day roadmap to success, which focuses on supporting you as you begin a new career, new environment, and a new set of responsibilities. Get ready to learn about effective strategies that will get you in a strong position to succeed. We are so excited to welcome NASA's Director of Diversity and Data Analytics, Janet Sellars, who serves on matters concerning the achievement and management of a diverse and inclusive workforce. She was also a big hit at our NELA conference. Janet was a 2012 recipient of the Women of Distinction Government Award from the YWCA. She was selected for the Black Engineer of the Year Award for Corporate Promotion of Education for 2017, and she is a 2018 recipient of NASA's Honor Award for Outstanding Leadership. So without further ado, I'll pass over the mic to our featured NASA speaker, Janet Sellars.
Thank you so much, Dora. This is so exciting for me. I just want to say, give a big shout out to my Ship NELA family. I had such a good time in Phoenix with you all, and I'm looking forward to working with you more in the future. This particular presentation today is really about helping you to prepare for the opportunities that are going to come your way moving forward as you graduate from college and try to get jobs and internships and all of that if you go on to graduate school. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to have opportunities for polling questions as well as questions throughout. So get your questions ready, and we'll make some time for you throughout the presentation as well as at the end. All right, we'll get started. So our objectives today, we're going to try to get a little bit of an understanding of personal branding, how to create a really competitive resume. We're going to describe the types of interviews that you might come across, and to give you some effective approaches to interviewing, and also how to leave a positive impression, and not just leaving a positive impression. Let's say you start off a little shaky and you want to kind of regroup. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can do that as well. So first of all, when we talk about your brand is a combination of two things: how you see yourself and how others see you. Right? And your personal brand is like this Venn diagram here. It's somewhere in the middle. So when you're thinking about your brand, you want to ask yourself what makes you different or valuable, or, where somebody really wants you as that go-to person at your company or in your university or in your internship. What would your colleagues say is your greatest strength? Think about that. Do you know what your colleagues would say? When you put a reference down, do you know what your references will say about you? You need to understand what they will say, because you don't want to be surprised if you put a reference down and then somebody says something that you didn't expect. What have I done lately to stand out? What do I do to make myself separated from the rest of the team that shows that I'm the go-to person? Do I habitually delegate up? And so sometimes pushing work off on other people doesn't necessarily give you the best impression. And is your boss happy to see you? And if you don't know, maybe they're not, And so think about that as you're moving forward. What are the habits that you have developed, positive or negative, that are going to affect your brand? So if you've got a pen and paper, hopefully you're taking notes. I want you to think about, just for a second, and we're not going to have a group activity or anything, but write down 3 words that describe your current brand according to your boss or your mentor or your department chair. And what are those words? Do they think of you as a super achiever, a go-getter? Do they think of you as not living up to your potential? Those kinds of things. Write those things down. Just think about that. And then, as you're writing down those words that describe your current brand according to your boss or mentor or department chair, write down 3 more words that would result in a more effective relationship with your boss or your department chair or mentor. Things that you could do that would improve that relationship, and things that you can do that can change your brand to something that's a little bit more positive and a little bit more useful to the people that you're dealing with. So when we're talking about brand, your habits become your brand. Are you all on time or always late? Are your drafts your best work? Just because someone asks you for a draft, that doesn't give you the license to give them to slack off and give them a draft that's full of typos or poor layouts and everything. Your drafts should be your best work. And it should be something that bosses or mentors or department chairs, professors, they should expect that of you. Do you greet your boss or anybody that you're working for or with complaints without solutions? I would encourage all of you to be solution focused. So if you see a problem, be ready to propose a solution. Even if the solution is not viable or it's, sort of pie in the sky, still present your boss or your mentor with a solution because they see that you're thinking ahead. Are you high maintenance or low maintenance? If you don't know, you might be a little on the high side. So think about that as well. Do you have to have certain things your way in order to get your job done? All right, and that speaks to flexibility. So break the habits that could be affecting and impacting your brand. Your brand determines whether you can manage up, and managing up means managing your boss, helping them to get where they need to be, and selling your ideas, making sure your ideas are mission focused, that your ideas are connected to what your boss is responsible for. And it also gives you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say you're having an off day, but you have a great brand. In other words, you're dependable. You're the go-to person. So let's say you're just not feeling like yourself at work, or you're not delivering that day. When you have a good brand, you get the benefit of the doubt. Dora, do you think it might be a good time for a polling question?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's see here. I'm going to launch the poll. Should you add your social media information to your resume? We have about 20% that have voted.
Okay.
And still going. We're up to 50%, 70%. We're at 80%, and
Awesome.
we'll go ahead and close the polls. And we have 88% that say no and 12% that say yes.
Wow. Well, 88%, I would go with the 88% on this particular poll question. Employers are going to look for your social media presence. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you clean that up a little bit. Outside of maybe LinkedIn, I probably wouldn't go beyond that. Facebook, IG, all of those other, Snapchat, all that stuff, if people are still doing Snapchat. I wouldn't do those particular ones because those are more personal in nature. If you're going to share your social media presence, I would keep it to something like LinkedIn, which is designed to be a professional social media platform. Good job. So we're going to move on to the competitive resume. So why do you need a resume? Summer jobs, internships, full-time employment, all of those. Sometimes you need one for graduate programs as well. And the purpose of the resume is to detail your relevant skills and strengths and experience and your interests. And it helps to build a LinkedIn page. A lot of the folks from Ship Neela, found me on LinkedIn, and I've got a plethora of new friends now. And so the other thing is, it is the calling card for you when you're applying for a job. It's the first way an employer gets to know something about you. So you have that one shot to create a great impression. And resumes tell a lot about you. They can communicate even hidden messages about you, about your branding, about whether or not you pay attention to detail. If you have typos or misspellings in your resume, that's a good reason for me to toss it as an employer because you didn't pay attention to detail. You didn't get somebody to help you review that resume. There should be no typos on your calling card. There just shouldn't be. Okay. So these are some of the most common resume components: header and profile, a skills summary, education, and they can be in different order. I normally put the most important stuff first, your skills, your education, your work experience. The activities and interests and awards and scholarships sort of round it out. At the end, they give the whole person concept. And so I put them closer to the end, but there's so many formats out there. And so there's no one set format. The one key that I do tell students, especially once you graduate, it's not always necessary to put your GPA because you've graduated. You've shown that you can do the work enough to get that bachelor's degree. And so I wouldn't stress over a GPA at that point. But typically when you're pursuing internships and all of that, they normally ask for a GPA. So just a note. And I've talked to other recruiters from various companies, and they all agree, generally speaking, that once you graduate, the GPA, they're just interested in what you can do for their company. Okay. There we go. Now, how to build one. Okay, so it's not just a list of job descriptions. Okay, it's really more about your skills, the successes, your strengths, and what you can do for the company. The people that are reviewing your resume really want to know what you can do for their company, and they want to be able to see those things. And so you want your resume to give good impact statements, not just I did this, I did that, I assisted in this, I assisted in that. You want to start off with action words like developed, streamlined. You want to really let them know that you are the right person for the job, right? So did you improve processes? Did you create efficiencies? Did you save the company money? Did you introduce new technologies? All of those things are extremely important in a resume. And the other thing is the employer, the person that's doing the hiring, wants to know: are you a doer, a person who can do the job, or are you an achiever? And there's a big difference between being a doer and an achiever. An achiever, say that 3 times real fast. An achiever makes an impact. Right? They improve processes. They create efficiencies. That's what you want to be, and that's what you want to communicate on your resume. So I don't typically advise people to include references on the resume. Have a separate list of references, because if you put that statement at the end, references available on request, then you should have them when the employer asks. You shouldn't have to write them down. There should be a typed professional reference list. I wouldn't put age, photos, things like that, personal details, and definitely don't use small font. A lot of people will use small font to try to crowd the resume with a lot of information. Really not necessary. And if you don't want to stump the interviewer or the hiring manager. You don't want them to have to work hard to find out about you. So, and then the excessive details and all of that, and the fancy font, the big font, the too big font. Your name could be 48 points, and the rest of the resume might be 10. And we really want to have some balance there. And the other thing, don't talk about or certainly don't commit to writing reasons for leaving your past job. We just want to know what skills you've developed to contribute to the position that you've applied for. And make sure it's targeted to the job that you're applying for. Analyze the job description or the job announcement and look at what they're looking for and tailor your job descriptions to what the employer is looking for. Pull out keywords, what I call power words, and use them in your application. And that doesn't mean copying the job description and putting it under on your resume and saying, hey, I did all of those things. You really have to use your own words, but they need to recognize that what you're doing connects to what they're looking for. Now, a lot of organizations use what we call applicant tracking systems, where before a human hand touches your resume, they scan it looking for keywords in a tracking system. And so that software has got to see the keywords that the job possesses before a human resources person actually takes a look at it. And so you've got to prove you're the best candidate for that particular job. And that means you have to pay attention to detail. You absolutely must. So, some other tips. Just said it, attention to detail. Your resume may not be the only first impression anymore. Cleaning up your social media profiles and creating a LinkedIn account is really, really, really key. I can give you an example. I was giving some counseling to a college student, and he asked me to check his social media profile. So I went to his Facebook page, and he had a picture on his profile. His profile picture was a picture of a cat, right? And this cat was stretched out with ropes on its paws, as if it was a parachute, and it was really startling. Now, if I was a cat person, I wouldn't like that, right? I just wouldn't like that. It sounds really odd, but I told him, I gave him some feedback about it, and I let him know, you don't know what you don't know. That was it wasn't bad. It wasn't like super good. It was just really, really odd. And there are so many people out there applying for jobs, looking for opportunities, that you don't want to give the employer a reason to not consider you, right? And you'll never know. You'll never know why they don't consider you. And I work for NASA, so we have technically savvy people here. They will figure out ways to check out all of your social media profiles if they have any inkling of something a little untoward or inappropriate. That's just another reason to move on to the next candidate. So keep it clean, keep it simple, and keep it moving. And then research and target your resume for every position. Sometimes we have what we call a functional resume that just describes skills, and then there's a chronological resume that gives us the skills in chronological order with the most recent one first. Please proofread. I can't stress enough that we really, really, really need to have you proofread, and have a trusted friend or colleague take a look at it as well and take that feedback. I always say, too, to save your resume as a PDF file so that it stays formatted the way you want it to stay formatted. Oftentimes, companies have different versions of Word, and it adjusts the format, and then it doesn't look like what you submitted. And so it gives the impression that you didn't pay attention to detail, and it really was probably just a transitioning to one version of Word from another. So let's be careful with that as well. Do you think it might be time for another question out in the field?
We don't have any questions yet.
Okay. All right, we'll keep it moving, or we could do another polling question.
All right. Let's do another polling question. See here. What makes your brand? Okay. And the poll has launched.
All right.
And 20% have voted. We've got 50%. We're at 75.
Awesome.
And we'll go ahead and close the polls. And we have 48 have chosen all the above, 41% have chosen A and C, and 11% have chosen your attitude.
Well, I tell you, Attitude is actually a pretty good one when you think about it. I think it's a combination of all of those things. Um, you know, what people think of you, how you see yourself, those things are definitely what make your brand. But all of those habits, those qualities that make you a dependable employee, all of those things make your brand. And the cool thing about a brand is that you can shape your brand and reshape it as many times as you need to, based on the situation and based on where you're trying to go in life. So let's move on to the interview. Now, your application or resume has landed you a chance to demonstrate your knowledge and skills. So you have proven that you have met the initial qualifications for the job. The interview is absolutely a crucial step. You've impressed the hiring manager with your resume, and you've been invited to the interview. And so I want to walk you through the typical interview process and give you some tips as we go forward. Basically, the interview process helps to determine if your desires and those of the organization match, and that if the things that you've described, whether or not they really are what you can deliver. You've got to be effective in your preparation, and it requires time and thought, organization, and practice. A lot of people don't practice interviews. I do mock interviews for a lot of our new employees here, our early career employees here, when they're pursuing other opportunities. And you'd be surprised how many people don't practice. So there's two kinds of interviews. The telephone interview and the group panel interview. And oftentimes, in both of those interviews, they will ask you a question, right? And most interviews start off with the tell me something about yourself. So you need to have like a 60-second sort of elevator chat ready to go, a personal commercial for yourself. And so I'm going to read something that I put together for a technical writer. Let's say you're applying for a job as a technical writer. So I'm going to read this, and this is what I would suggest that you start thinking about the type of personal commercial for yourself. So for a technical writer, I would say I have an unusual mixture of technical aptitude with writing skills. It's rare to find people like me with that kind of technical background who can also write well. I love translating complicated technical information into words that a non-technical person can easily understand. I have a software background, which means I can also communicate well with both the tech team and my intended audience. Being able to bridge those two worlds so comfortably is the reason I was especially interested in the position here. So as you see, that tells them a little bit about you, and it also tells them that you were really thinking about the kinds of skills that the employer was looking for. So that's really, really, really key. So let's go on to the telephone interview. Usually it's the initial interview method to filter out or screen out candidates. And so sometimes they call you by surprise, right? They call you by surprise and you don't know. Calm down. Just ask for a moment to remove any distractions. And you can even ask, can you call them back? Say you're in a class or something like that, and ask to call them back. Write down the caller's name and the telephone number. And let's say you get to a place where you can actually conduct the interview. And so they need to hear you smile. They need to hear that you are engaged and really are excited about this interview. What I suggest to people too is that they dress for an interview, even though it's a telephone interview. Somehow, if you're in your PJs, you're probably not going to communicate. You're going to communicate like you're in your PJs. Put on a shirt, a dress, or however you normally dress professionally, and do that telephone interview as if you were doing it personally. Okay, have a copy of your resume and the job description in front of you if you can, and be prepared to take notes. And you should practice your telephone voice, right? Also, one of the other things I do tell folks about telephone interviews, it's your voicemail message. If I call and I have to leave you a message because I want to schedule a telephone interview and I hear something like, yo, it's me, you know what to do. That's a voicemail message that I probably won't even leave a message. I'll probably just keep calling because that's the number you gave for your interviews. So your voicemail message should just be just as professional as you would speaking to someone, it's really, really important to communicate a professional demeanor. And that's a first opportunity to make a good impression. Do we have any questions so far?
Yeah, we have one that just came in from Brian
Okay.
Gonzalez. Big
Oh,
shout out to
hello.
him. He's asking, how should you showcase your experience in a resume when previous jobs you had dealt with sensitive or classified information like DoD contractors?
Yes, that is really, really, really tough. And so, first of all, I would ask my previous employer, what do I have permission to divulge, right? When I'm describing that job, I would ask permission and describe it that way. Now, there are some general things that you can talk about: team building, right? Improving processes, those kinds of things. You don't have to describe the specific process necessarily, but I would definitely first get permission, and understand what the previous employer will give you permission to reveal. And also, I would look at the job announcement that you used to get the job in the first place, because that's publicly available information. So I would start there and pull words from that job description to use to describe your work. I hope that helps. Any other questions?
Yes, this one's
Okay.
from Wesley Rivers. Big shout out to
Hey.
him. What are the key things that will set me apart and make employers interested in me when applying at somewhere like NASA?
Oh wow. Okay. A couple of things. First, your technical expertise is really important. However, we're also looking for people with good people skills. So if you can strike a balance between your technical chops and your team building and your people skills, that is really a great combination to have. And sometimes you can demonstrate your people skills in your extracurricular activities, right? You may not, you might be focusing on coding and, data processing or whatever it is that you're doing in your job or your internship. But to stand out, I think a combination of people skills and technical skills always wins us over. Hope that helps. Okay, how about we go on to telephone interviews, finishing that up. So, when you practice your telephone voice, you really, really need to give a pleasant greeting and thank the interviewer. Always, always be polite. Thank the interviewer for calling, and then ask, once the interview is over, ask for the next steps in the process. So going on to group panel interviews, that's the typical in-person interview. Normally, it's at least a panel interview is at least 3 people. And so it requires a lot more energy and a lot more effort on your part, because you've got about 45 minutes in the typical interview to build a rapport with people you don't know most of the time. And you've got to remember their names, shake their hands. You want to have a firm handshake, but not too terribly aggressive, right? And so you've really got to really practice what that looks like. Maintaining good eye contact with each person when you're answering their questions. And if you do know someone, don't let familiarity get in the way. Sometimes, if you know somebody, and at NASA, since people never leave NASA, we always seem to know somebody on the interview panel. But what happens is, when you get too familiar, you assume that they know things about you. And technically, the only things I can consider in an interview, or when you apply for the job, is your resume and what you say in the interview. I really can't fill in the blanks for you if I know you. So communicate as if the people don't know you at all. Okay. So, most common types of interview questions, right? We have the opportunity questions, the technical kind of questions, behavior based, and that goes back to the previous question we were asked about people skills. Sometimes you'll get behavior based questions that will ask you, what would you do in this situation? When you have those examples in your pocket, your hip pocket, it's easier to answer those kinds of questions. And then there are those no-win questions. We'll go through all of those. So, opportunity questions. Tell me about yourself. Now, they're not talking about I was born by the river in a little tent. They're not talking about that. They're really saying, tell me about yourself as it relates to this job and what you can do for us. All right, your greatest strengths. Um, think about what your greatest strengths are from a work perspective. You're punctual. You're a team player. You're extremely organized. You know, they always ask you, why do you want to work here? Know something about the company, right? I think I talked about that a little bit earlier. Know something about the company, that they are very competitive, that they develop their people. It's a good working environment. What do you know about the organization and its culture? Do your research. Google, Google, Google. Do your research. So, an opportunity question: what is most difficult for you? That goes to the weakness question. That's We don't want to say things like, I'm always late. I just can't get up in the morning. I don't know what to do about that. That is not what you want to say. Okay? That is just not what you want to say. You want to talk about, let's say, sometimes I'm just impatient with folks on the job that aren't committed to the task at hand, or something like that. And then you want to talk about what you're doing to work on it. So when you talk about a weakness or a difficulty, always finish it off with talking about how you're trying to improve. That's what these questions are about. You may be asked to demonstrate technical knowledge on the spot. They may ask you to code, give you a real technical problem or scenario to solve. So you be ready for those kinds of things. My son did an internship with Google, and his first interview, he had to write code, and it was like an hour-long session. And then he had to do the other interview as well. So it was like a 2.5 interview. He was exhausted after it. So be ready for that. The behavior-based questions. These are popular, very, very popular. They want to know what you would do in a particular situation. Now, you don't have to have experience in that situation to know what you would do in a situation. Sometimes they want an example of when you had to overcome major obstacles to complete a project. It could be a major obstacle to complete a paper or a project for school as well. And I love this fourth bullet, giving an example of when you had to be persuasive and sell your idea. Think about what that looks like. Okay. So, does anybody have a question out there that was really, really difficult for them to ask? Please share that with us, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, these no-win questions. Weaknesses. Focus on something that you'd like to improve versus an actual weakness. I talked a little bit about tardiness. Okay, so something that you would like to improve: your patience, maybe organizational skills. I've started to write lists to help me become more organized. I use my Outlook calendar to schedule things. Those kinds of things. When you're focusing on weaknesses, don't focus on something that could derail your ability to get the job. So, some people think that, asking a question about you being unsuccessful might be something that could derail you. Well, everybody has something that they've done that has been unsuccessful. What we want to know is what you learned, right? And how the fact that you can get up, start over, regroup. Because what we say around here in my office, a setback is a setup for a comeback. You can always come back from something that's been unsuccessful. And I think I said in my presentation to the NELA folks that success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that matters. Okay, and you may get a question like, "Why did you leave your last job?" Keep it short, and do not badmouth your previous employer. Don't do that. It's just bad form, bad manners. It serves no purpose at all, none whatsoever. Okay. Any questions out there so far?
No question. Oh, here's one.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see. No name on it.
Okay.
Let me pull it out. All right. It says the long one. Hang on. I have a
Okay.
I have a 10-year gap in my telecom career. I decided
Ah,
to take time to raise my kids and support my wife's medical career. Hang on. Still trying to pull it out some. Hang on one second. Little
okay.
technical difficulty here. All right.
Mhm.
During that time, I completed my MBA, but I did not engage in engineering work. How do you propose that I address my 10-year gap in my resume and in my cover letter? And actually, this is from Fabian Gonzalez Figueroa. So thank you for sending the question in.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So a couple of things I'm thinking about, sort of on the spot. First of all, I would do a functional resume, right? So it does a functional resume doesn't focus on dates; it focuses on skills. And the fact that you went and got your MBA to support your engineering work is a real plus. And then I would probably just be forthright about your gap. I wouldn't necessarily focus on the actual time period, but focus on the things that you did to develop. You didn't have necessarily have to do engineering work, but maybe you tutored people out there. Maybe you helped your place of worship, or you did some volunteer work to help people uh, uh, use your engineering skills to help other people is really what I'm saying. So describe those kinds of things. And I I would, in an interview situation, I would be honest. I took a break to support my family. And most employers really do understand that. But I would focus on a functional resume as opposed to a chronological resume, and really play up the fact that you went to school while you were supporting your family, while you were doing different things that weren't necessarily in the engineering field. But an MBA and an engineering degree, they go hand in hand in this world, because um, you develop those soft skills, those people skills with an MBA. And as I was telling the previous questioner, having a combination of those skills really is a valuable thing to have. Hopefully that was helpful. Do we want to do a polling question?
Sure. Okay, last polling question.
Okay.
And we are ready to launch. Go ahead and start voting. And we have 20%, 50%, and we are at 75%. So we'll go ahead and close the polls. And we have 50% say behavior-based, 23% say opportunity, 19% say technical, and 8% say no win.
Wow. Well, those are typical answers. You know, I've asked those questions before, and those are typical. Wow. Hmm. So, does anybody have? I had asked earlier. Did anybody have a difficult question that they couldn't answer? Did you get a response to that at all?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
So this one's from Angelica Cortez, who's saying, this is great information, but I have a question that fits
Mhm.
even before you apply to a specific job position. How would you approach employers to learn about the positions you can offer your skill? How does, yes.
Okay. Okay. So I would try to find, um, if you know somebody that works at a particular company, ask to shadow them for a day or two. Can I shadow you and get an idea of what you do, what your company is about, and then you can start observing about what they need, what you where you see a need. Oftentimes, outsiders can see things that people on the inside just take for granted. And so I would start there. Maybe you have a department chair who has an in with a particular company, or a CEO at a company, or a human resources person at a company, and offer your offer to or ask to shadow somebody in leadership to find out what the company is about. You'd be surprised how open companies are to that, and they get to see you too, see how you interact with their staff and with their leadership. So that's a way to do that. Any other questions?
Yeah, we've got another tough one from
Oh God!
Benjamin Garcia,
Oh,
who's
nice.
asking, one time I was asked, if you were in my shoes, who would you hire, you or your friend?
Oh my gosh. Um, I'd say both. If you have two positions, hire us both. If you only have one, I'd have to say hire me, because my friend is so skilled. He will be or she will be just fine, and they will get a job. That's funny. I think that's one of those separator questions. Sometimes, we'll ask, I used to have a hiring manager who would ask how many Cheerios are in the box or something like that, just to see people sweat. Sometimes interviewers play games with you like that. I don't think it's funny. They're already nervous enough as it is. But I would step out and say, I'm the best person for the job. All right. Any more?
Yes, we have another one from Ricardo Maldonado. Thank you for
All
sending in
right.
this question. He's saying, how does one answer, do you have experience with blank in an interview, specifically when the role itself requires such skill, but the interviewee is not strong in such a skill? Example, oh gosh, let's see. Example is role requires experience in automation, but interview mainly deals with manual manufacturing.
Okay. So I would probably focus on my ability to learn, and I would give examples on how I didn't have a particular skill in another area, but in 2 months, 90 days, I developed that skill where I became the expert or something like that. I would give an example that is similar to what they're looking for, and really, really focus on the fact that you are a quick study, that you have transferable skills that will lend themselves to learning this automation extremely quickly. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have one from Jessica Bettis. And
Okay.
she's saying that I transitioned from engineering to STEM education recently. I've
Oh,
had
nice.
my I've had my current job for 2 years. I was recently called out for an interview, but I know the other applicants will have more experience or education in this area. How can I convey that I am qualified due to my transferable skills?
Well, I tell you what, the big thing for you is understanding that while people have skills on paper, oftentimes employers don't even know what they want until they see it. So I would research that company, right? And identify an area where you think they have a need and you can meet that need, right? You identify that need, you meet that need based on the fact that you have technical skills and soft skills on the education side. And you can lift the company up and make them even more competitive because of the combination of skills that you have, and that you're versatile and you can be used in more than one place. So let's say they hire you for that job, and then another opportunity makes itself available. They don't even have to compete it. They have you on staff to take care of that need as well. I hope that helps. Okay. think let's move on. I think we're getting short on time here, so I want to make sure we get through the slides and everything. So let's talk about preparing for the interview. Talked about this throughout this presentation today, researching the mission and the vision of the organization. Certainly know the job description. If you can get some biographies of the people who are interviewing you, or the CEO of the company, the key leaders, and certainly review the company website and try to follow the organization on LinkedIn or other social media. Look for trends, annual reports, and all of that, growth opportunities, and know their competitors. If you are working for a company like Google or something like that, know who Google's competitors are, Facebook and all of those other tech companies out there. Know what their competitors are doing, and if you've been reading about that, maybe you can give them some ideas to stay ahead of the game. So what we want to take to the interview, I try to keep it simple. A leather folder or a small briefcase. 10 by 13 is a great size because it protects all of your reference materials, your resume, and your reference letters, I should say. I would suggest not taking gym bags or backpacks or college book bags. They're bulky and they don't necessarily convey a professional look. And you're trying to make an impression for the job that you want, and that's not the job that you have. Make sure you have extra copies of your resume and that list of references. I can't tell you how just terribly annoying it is when I ask for a list of references and the person has to write them down or look in their phone or something like that. Make sure you bring a pen and a notebook, and maybe a calendar. And I would say don't take your cell phone or tablet or other electronic devices into an interview. And some people say, well, I want to manage my time, so that's why I have my cell phone. The challenge with that is oftentimes you'll get a text and you can't help but glance at it, and it distracts you. It takes you off your game. So I would say if you want to manage your time, wear a watch. Okay? Let's see. Your grooming and dress. Dress for the job you want. Business suit. Make sure your clothes fit and they're free of wrinkles. Please limit jewelry. All right? Bangle bracelets and all of that kind of stuff are distracting, right? A watch is a ring. Those things are appropriate. Go easy on the perfume. Please, please, please. You can when an interviewer starts coughing, you have too much perfume on, right? Remove any gum or candy that's in your mouth prior to the interview. However, mints are your friends. Mints are a very, very good accessory. So, I don't even want to tell you the bad breath story. Had a person whose breath was just so. Anyway, we don't want to go there. Just, use mints accordingly. And when you arrive, greet everyone you meet with respect and a friendly smile. Make eye contact and give them a firm but not aggressive handshake to everybody that you meet in the room. And that means not just the interview panel, but the person at the front desk, the receptionist or secretary, because I promise you, I asked the receptionist or secretary what they think about that person. Were they rude to you? Were they friendly? Did they act as if you weren't important? I want to know that because that gives me a clue about the kind of employee you're going to be. I want everybody up and down the chain of command to be treated with respect and dignity. And so if you don't treat our secretary right, then I can guarantee you're probably not going to treat anybody else right. So make sure from the minute you step over that threshold into that building that you treat everyone with respect. Okay, so there are 4 components to the interview continuum, right? The opening of the interview, what I call impression management, and why you for the job and why them as your employer, and then a closing, all right? So the other thing I want to kind of stress in this portion of it, interviews can be extremely stressful, and we know that. Let's say you sense that something has gone wrong in the interview. Let's say you just don't feel like you made a good impression. There's a trick to that. You acknowledge it, you explain it, and then you provide a new impression. You just say, hey, I need a timeout. I didn't answer that question the way I wanted to. May I start over? You acknowledge it, and then you explain it and you provide a new impression. People seeing you regroup and get yourself together in a reasonable amount of time have a lot of respect for that. First impressions are powerful, but so are last impressions. Okay? Now, when you're asked a question, take a moment to think about what you're going to say. You don't have to blurt out an answer, right? Write down keywords from the question. That's why I tell you to take a pen and a small notepad. When you're finished answering, stop talking. Don't let the silence intimidate you. Interviewers are writing down their impressions, so let them do that, okay? The one thing about an interview I try to stress with everybody is, while the interviewers, they may control the questions, you control the answers, okay? So let's start with the opening. The opening is a way to build rapport. They may ask you, how was your trip? Was the traffic bad? Allows for a little small talk just to break the ice to get you comfortable, okay? They'll probably explain to you how long the interview is, that you may use pen and paper to take down notes, those kinds of things. So that's what that opening component will do. All right? So when we talk about components 2 and 3, right, the impression management and the why you, why them, they tend to overlap because this is your opportunity to convey your what I call 3CA, okay, competency, compatibility, chemistry, and accomplishment. So you've got to be competent and you've got to be compatible with the organization that you're applying for. And there's got to be a little bit of chemistry with you and your future boss. And then also, you've got to be able to communicate your accomplishments in a way that benefits the company, how your accomplishments translate to helping that company. So, and be honest about your goals. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Oftentimes you'll get that question. Be honest about that. Now, questions you should ask at getting close to the end of the interview. Interview is a two-way street. You need to be prepared with questions of your own. And I say that you should frame your questions around 5 areas: the responsibilities of the position, resources that would be available to help you do the job, the authority level of the position, performance measures, and the corporate culture. I'm giving you some examples, but these aren't the cure-all or end-all. Largest problem facing the department. You can even ask the interviewer, what do you enjoy most about working here? What does success look like? Tell me a little bit more about the team, how many people, that kind of thing. And then, as you're closing out, what are the next steps in the interview process? I usually try to make that one the last one. So, as we're closing the interview, reaffirm your interest in the position. Have a closing statement. Tell them why, one more time, why you are the best person for the job. Again, ask about the next steps and thank everyone on the panel for providing you with an opportunity to interview, and let them know that you look forward to hearing from them. So, typically in an interview, the last question or questions are going to be, do you have any questions for us? And is there anything you want to add? So, those questions I gave you before are good questions. Don't stump the panel. Don't say, why is your budget so low, or that kind of stuff. Don't stump the panel. Ask questions that you know that they can provide you an answer to. All right? Now, when they ask you, is there anything you want to add? Not only is this an opportunity for you to do a closing statement, it's also an opportunity for you to correct something that you didn't feel comfortable with early on in the interview. So take that opportunity. I'd like to go back to question 3. I didn't provide as complete an answer as I wanted to do. It's okay to say that because, again, they control the questions, but you control the answers. All right? So often, only 20% of candidates actually send a follow-up or thank you letter or email. Send a letter to each person who interviewed you. And you can use this letter or email to add even additional information that you didn't cover in your interview. So it serves 2 purposes. And, I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed and said, man, I should have said this. I should have said that. Now, it doesn't need to be really long, but if there's something really, really, really crucial that you wanted to say and you didn't, please use this as a way to do that. Okay. So I'm hoping that you guys learned a little bit about effective interviewing, and hopefully this will help you on your journey to make you a little bit more successful in your next job interview or internship. And you've got to practice. I can't stop. Can't say that enough. Practice, 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 practice. Okay. And the management of your career really is your responsibility, right? Take it seriously. Are there any other questions for me?
Yes, we do have a few more questions.
Okay.
Eric, Eric Guzman, thank you for sending your question in. He wants to know a little bit more about what you meant by work sample.
Work sample. Okay, so let's see, work sample. Meaning a writing. It could be a writing sample. Is that what we're talking about? I think that's what we're talking about. So let's go with that. When I talk about a work sample, you can show what a writing sample is, or an example of a project that was successful that you can describe in a short way, and how you influenced that project, what your particular contribution was. Those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about when I'm talking about that. Hope that helped.
Okay,
And
and
you
then
and you guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have other questions. Janet Sellars, pretty easy to find. Probably about 50 students from Ship Nila found me, so I'm sure you guys can find me too.
and that was actually the next question from Wesley. He's wondering if he could reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely, feel free, and mention that you were on this webinar, so I'll remember.
Okay, so Brian Gonzalez is asking, I'm more inclined to get certifications rather than getting a master's degree for software positions. Do you think these two things are equally valued in industry?
I do. I absolutely do. What I would do though, if you have some specific interest in specific companies, I would find out what certifications they value. If you're really targeting particular companies, find out what certifications are useful for their types of positions. But absolutely, certifications really do matter. Again, most of the tech companies are really looking for folks that can deliver and deliver on the spot. And your certifications give them a clue about what you do. And then the other thing about certifications too is that you have to do that beyond school, right? That's extra work that you're doing. So you're showing them that you're willing to take those extra steps to get those certifications. So yeah, I think that you're spot on. If you don't want to get a master's degree right now, a certification, and it shows that you're not just sitting around waiting for a job to drop in your lap. You're really trying to prepare yourself for that next opportunity. Hope that helps.
And actually, we're about to start some certification programs on our
Oh,
website
nice.
after November, so that's coming up soon. Okay, so the next question is from Benjamin Garcia, and he's saying, going back to the what are your goals in the next 5 years question,
Mhm.
that's tricky because you don't want to give the impression that you are there just for the training or to use it as a stepping stone.
Well, you can say the things that I learned at this company, the developmental opportunities that I get at this company, will help me to advance here. You can say that you're trying to advance in the company because you know that the skills that you bring are going to benefit the current job that you're applying for, but your expectation is to rise up in the ranks in that company and to develop. I would really focus on the company. I wouldn't say that I want to use this to a stepping stone to begin my own startup or something like that. That'll probably turn them off a little bit. But if you start focusing on what you can do for them while they're doing something for you, I think you'll get a better response. You'll get a better result from that. Good question.
Okay, and then the last question, I think it's for me.
Okay.
Elber Balabarca. Wow, it's a mouthful. He's asking, is the PowerPoint available somewhere? And we will have this video recorded and posted on the ship.org website under programs and then under latinXfactor. So we save all of our videos there. So Janet, any last words?
Well, I tell you, the big thing for me is that the fact that you're here on a Wednesday evening, um, trying to advance your careers tells me a lot about you. Continue to practice, practice, practice. Don't be shy. Reach out to mentors and colleagues and network, network, network. Reach out to people like me and others. I have friends. If I don't have an answer to a question, I can certainly point you in the direction of somebody who may have that answer for you. And I am open to chatting with you. Several of the folks from Ship Nila sent me their resumes. I gave them a quick review and things like that. And so I am happy to help any way that I can. I so appreciate your time this evening and thank you for your attention.
Okay, well, there you go, Ship Familia. Please join me in thanking Janet Sellars. Bravo, mil gracias. Excellent tips for our members. So, Ship Familia, remember to take our survey. You will receive a thank you email with the survey link. After this webinar, we need your constructive feedback to make the program the best it can be. We hope to see you October 16th for webinar number 11, Slaying the Career Fair. Come join us to discover ways to be successful in the career fair and in other interviews. So signing off from Ship National, buenas noches, Ship Familia.
Bye bye. Thank you again.